This is the Boox Go 7, and honestly, it might just be the best e-reader Boox has ever made. And yes, it finally supports note-taking with a pen. People have been waiting years for that. But it's not perfect. So let's talk about why it's an awesome e-reader, a great compact tablet, but just an okay dedicated note-taking device. After the Boox Page followed the Leaf 1 and 2, the Go 7 finally uses the Go branding, which originally started with the Go 10.3 note-taking tablet. Confused yet? You're not alone. Boox's naming system is a mess. And don't even get me started on the Boox Go Color 7 Gen 2. But back to the actual device. This new 7-inch e-reader features an asymmetrical design and physical page turn buttons. And that brings me right to my favorite update of the Go 7. The redesigned buttons. With the Leaf 2 and Page, I always appreciated the fact that they had page turn buttons, but I never really liked how they were implemented. Without a gap between them, it was hard to quickly tell which button was which without looking. The pressure points felt inconsistent as well. The Boox Go 7 fixes both of these issues. The small gap between the buttons might not look as sleek as the old design, but it's so much more functional. Finding the right button is no longer a guessing game. Another big improvement is the button pressure points. These new buttons work no matter where you press. Top, middle, bottom, doesn't matter. The old button design wasn't terrible, but the outer edges weren't clickable. So this is a big step forward in usability. Together with the now more rounded button design, using them feels incredibly comfortable. It's the closest thing we've had to replacement for the Kindle Oasis excellent buttons since Amazon discontinued the 7-inch model in 2024. I know, these changes sound small, but the improvement in day-to-day use really can't be overstated. Speaking of the Kindle Oasis design, you might have seen pictures of the Chinese version of the Go 7. It's called the Leaf 5. Yep, we're back again with the confusing names. That version, for the lack of a better word, has a bump on the back, similar to the curved asymmetrical shape of the Kindle Oasis. I'm genuinely disappointed they didn't bring that design to the international version as well, because I'm sure it would have improved the ergonomics even more. The Go 7 is impressively thin, with a textured back that, while most likely not as grippy as the Chinese model, still feels very secure in the hand. And with a weight of 195 grams, it's also very comfortable and not too heavy. The e-reader is available in black and white, and while the two models now both have flush displays unlike previous models, they are actually still different. The black model has a scratch-resistant front glass, while the white model has acrylic glass. So the white version is less scratch-resistant, but should offer slightly better writing feel. Build quality is very good, and despite the thin build, the device feels incredibly sturdy. The button rattling I noticed with the first generation Go Color 7 is absent from this one. The only thing I wished Boox changed was the power button placement. With the grip on the right, the power button is on the bottom edge of the device. Leaning the device on something can accidentally press the button a bit too easily for my taste. Kobo fixed that issue by putting a slightly recessed button on the back of the e-readers, which is the best solution in this space in my opinion. The Boox Go 7 runs an octa-core Snapdragon 690 SoC with 4 GB of RAM, and has more than enough power for anything you do on a device like this. The Go 7 actually feels surprisingly snappy, especially in the fastest e-ink refresh mode, more on that in a second. But there's one small issue I noticed. Something seems to have changed with the capacitive layer of the touchscreen. It just doesn't respond quite as reliably at the finger input as other Boox devices I've used. It's not a huge deal, most of the time it works just fine, but on days when my skin is a bit dry, like after washing my hands a bit too often, the screen sometimes struggles to register swipes or gestures properly. So it's a minor inconsistency, but worth mentioning if you had similar issues with capacitive touchscreens in the past. The Go 7 has 64 GB of internal storage, of which around 49 GB are usable, and you can expand those with a microSD card. The card slot is slightly recessed, which doesn't affect usability, but does look a little less polished. On the same side, you'll also find the mono speaker, microphone, as well as the USB-C connector. Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are available as wireless connections, of course. I believe this is the first time Boox is highlighting a water-repellent design in one of the e-readers. They emphasize it's not waterproof, so it doesn't match the full protection you'd get on a Kindle, Kobo or Pocketbook e-reader. But that's not necessarily a downside, because then we wouldn't have gotten a microSD card expansion. So nice to have that water repellent design, but it's still best to be careful with the device. The capacity of the battery with 2300 mAh is unchanged from the Boox Page, and I will come back to battery performance in a moment. The Go 7 uses e-ink Carta 1300, which delivers excellent contrast levels. Based on L-star values, a measure of lightness where 100 represents pure white and 0 pure black, the Go 7 scores 66 for white and 24 for black. That translates to brighter whites and deeper blacks, contributing to a more readable and visually striking display. For comparison, the Boox Page with Carta 1200 had similar values, while the older Leaf 2, which used an unspecified Carta screen, showed slightly but noticeably lower contrast. So the Boox Go 7's display is very comfortable to read on. Ghosting performance is best described as average, not particularly good, but not bad either. And it doesn't hurt usability. That's actually not a small achievement for e-ink Carta 1300 displays, since we've seen a few other devices using the same tech that suffer from much more noticeable ghosting. And if it does become noticeable on the Go 7, it can usually be controlled by adapting the e-ink viewing settings. That's typically not needed for the default apps, but for third-party apps. There are now only 3 refresh modes available instead of 4 on the Boox Page: HD, Speed, and A2. The X refresh mode didn't make a comeback on the Go 7, which I honestly think is a smart choice. It looks like Boox is trying to simplify those refresh modes to make using their devices a bit easier. As the name suggests, Speed mode is quicker than HD and A2 is the fastest. So depending on the app you're using, switching to one of these can improve usability on the e-ink screen, because most apps aren't designed to run on a display like this. You typically don't use these faster modes all of the time because they reduce image quality slightly. Because what good is a 300 ppi display if you're not making use of it? The Frontlight is color temperature adjustable, so great for day and nighttime reading. Quality is also very good, but same as with most other devices with an asymmetrical design and side-lit displays, there's a slight brightness gradient from left to right. It's more noticeable the brighter you set the display, which has a maximum brightness of 182 nits, which is incredibly bright and typically something you won't need often. With e-ink, it's best to keep brightness just high enough to improve readability without straining your eyes with unnecessary brightness. And that brings me to something that isn't quite as great: the writing performance. As I mentioned earlier, we finally get note-taking with a stylus at this size, a first for Boox. However, the Go 7 uses capacitive pen input instead of EMR or Wacom technology. That alone wouldn't be a deal breaker. Devices like the Boox Tab XC or Remarkable Paper Pro show that capacitive pens can still deliver excellent writing performance. But on the Go 7, just going by the hardware, I wouldn't consider note-taking a core feature for a couple of reasons actually. The most obvious limitation is the screen size. It's roughly A6, which is pretty small for handwriting, especially if you're used to larger note-taking tablets. And if you're thinking, well, no problem, I just write a little smaller, then you're out of luck, unfortunately. Which brings me to my second issue: precision. The capacitive grid in here isn't as fine as the one on the Tab XC. So pen input just isn't as accurate. This is actually noticeable in everyday use, especially with tight curves and certain letters not registering the way you wrote them. Letters like M, N, V, or W tend to suffer the most. And the third issue is the tapping experience, both in sound and feel. The combination of the hard plastic pen tip and the glass front of the eReader creates a very pronounced tapping sound. It actually feels harsher than on an iPad, largely because the InkSense pen tip is so hard. And since the screen surface is smooth, there's very little resistance. The pen just glides across the display a bit too easily. And no, you can't just put the Tab XC's soft ink spare pen tips in here because they don't fit. Pen latency sits at around 40 milliseconds, which isn't terrible, and I'd say it's generally fast enough that lines don't noticeably trail behind your pen. But compared to other Boox devices, which typically land between 20 and 30 milliseconds, it's definitely not the smoothest writing experience Boox has delivered. Like other devices in this size segment, such as those from Kobo and Pygmy, the pen needs to be charged separately via USB-C. which can be inconvenient at times. It also doesn't attach to the device magnetically, so you'll need to use the folio with the pen loop if you want to carry it together with the Go 7. The InkSense pen itself is made of metal and feels very good to hold. There's also a button on the side of the pen, so you can erase strokes easily. However, I don't like the slight rattle the pen produces. Things improve significantly on the software side of note-taking. The Go 7 benefits from Boox's incredibly feature-rich note-taking app, which is the same as on other Boox devices. You get different pen types with pressure and tilt sensitivity, layers, templates, shapes, audio recording, and interlinking features. There's also a new outline tool that lets you build a table of contents manually, and it's preserved when you export your notes to PDF. But I'd argue that note-taking like this is actually not the main benefit here. Instead, making annotations and highlights inside of ebooks is more interesting in this format. I'll come back to that in a moment. You can sync your notebooks to the cloud with server locations in the EU, US, and China. Onyx says in the privacy policy that they follow European data protection laws, but just like other Boox devices, there's still some background communication with the servers. I really wish they'd offer an opt-out option to disable this entirely. That said, it's not unusual behavior for Android-based devices. And if privacy is a concern, a software firewall with or without rooting can help keep things in check. The Boox Go 7 runs Android 13 with the March 2025 security patch. That's not the very latest, but it's still solid for e-ink. Android 13 still receives security updates from Google, and most apps will likely support it for years to come. You can install apps either by sideloading APK files or more conveniently through the integrated Google Play Store. Just open the store and install apps like on any other regular tablet. That said, most Android apps aren't optimized for e-ink displays. So to get the best experience, you'll need to experiment a bit with Boox's e-ink refresh modes and app settings. There's a bit of a learning curve, just like with any other Boox device. But overall, if you're willing to spend a little time getting used to the interface and tweaking a few things, the Go 7 isn't hard to use. In fact, Boox has done a very decent job improving the balance between simplicity for casual users and keeping advanced options for power users. The built-in library offers useful filtering and sorting options, and the reading app has all the important features too. Boox recently redesigned it to resemble the Kindle user interface, so you can quickly switch between different text styles and even save your own themes. I'd say the biggest benefit of having handwriting options with the pen in this size format is the ability to make annotations in Boox. That's a nice option to have, and it works well. It even does a very decent job in preserving highlight positions relative to the text when changing text stylings. Looks like Boox has made a few adaptations to that system to work as well as it does. Besides pen highlights, you can also highlight text and add notes with selecting text with your finger and using the QWERTY keyboard. The built-in dictionary is sourced online, but can be changed to local dictionaries as well. However, only English and Chinese are available to choose from, and you need to find suitable dictionaries yourself to sideload, which can be a bit of a hassle. There's also a well-functioning text-to-speech function available we know from other Boox devices. It makes use of the default Android speech synthesis and allows you to download packs for different languages and dialects. Let's listen to how that sounds.
I cannot see that London has any great advantage over the country. For my part, except the shops and public places, the country is a vast deal pleasanter. Is not it, Mr. Bingley?
And just a quick note, the built-in reading app doesn't support Adobe DRM or LCP. So if you buy books from certain ebook stores, you'll need to use a third-party reading app that supports those DRM options. PDF features are also the same as on larger Boox devices, which is actually more important on a small device like this, because reading large format documents on a 7-inch screen would be a bit tedious otherwise. The 3D PPI resolution helps in getting a quick overview of what's on the page even when zoomed out, but reading like that isn't very practical. Especially for academic text, the columns mode is incredibly useful here. It allows you to zoom in on sections on the page and then jump from one segment to the next with just a tap. This works incredibly well, and it's honestly my favorite PDF feature on any e-ink device. Battery life is not the best I've seen, but still decent. Just reading without the front light, a page turn interval of 15 seconds with an automatic e-ink page refresh every 5 pages results in a runtime of 37 hours. Turning up the front light to 45 nits results in a runtime of 24 hours with the full brightness, which honestly is something you most likely never need because it's so bright. We get a runtime of only 12 hours with one charge. Writing with the pen with those same front light settings results in runtimes of 9 hours, 8 hours, and 5.5 hours respectively. And the pen itself should be good for at least 60 hours of continuously writing, but I can't say for how long exactly. Because even after over 15 hours of continuously writing, the battery indicator still didn't drop, and at that point I stopped the test, because battery life of the pen simply won't be an issue in day-to-day use for most people. And that brings us to the conclusion. And there's no doubt in my mind, the Boox Go 7 is the best e-reader Boox has ever released. It's compact, well built, has excellent page turn buttons, a good front light, great contrast levels, and is mostly snappy used, and has decent battery life for reading ebooks at least. Ironically, the only thing the Go 7 doesn't nail is the newest edition, note-taking with the pen. Even with the excellent note-taking app, I'd say the pen is best suited for quick scribbles and not serious writing. The smaller screen, the constant harsh tapping sound and feel, the slightly higher pen latency, and the less precise pen input just don't add up to a good experience. I'd say pen input works best for annotating ebooks directly on the page, and in that context, it's actually a great feature to have. With that in mind, the only thing that I actually found to be annoying in the end was the sometimes fiddly touchscreen response to finger input. So if you're looking for a compact, flexible e-reader with a sharp e-ink display, excellent performance, and the best page turn buttons available right now, and full Android app support, the Boox Go 7 is a fantastic choice. Just don't get it as your primary note-taking tablet. Boox has much better offerings for that, like the Boox Go 10.3 or Boox Note Air 4C. Check out those videos here, and like and subscribe if you found this review helpful. Thanks for your time watching, and I'll see you in the next one.